So, my idea is to show people just the bare minimum space of where they live. This could take me to abandoned buildings where people may squat or simply just a doorway. I'll also observe what homeless people do and add words to the page opposite to describe the location or anything going on, or like any emotions that have been felt by them or by me, or just around. So it's like, where do people sleep? So it's not really something that people actually see, so I'm trying to put it out there. It's like, this is where they go. The book's going to be called Home, like, because it makes people think, well, this is my home. They'll sit reading it in their home, and it's going to be a tiny little book. So they'll see this picture and think, that's where they live. Look out into the big where they live and think, wow. The audience would be people around 25 to 30-year-olds, people with experience that have been travelling and had understanding of different cultures and seeing like atrocities from like around the world and making it more visible closer to home may incite them to do something about it, like seeing that it's on their doorstep, like just around that corner. And I think, wow, it actually happens here as well. This will give the feeling, or it will make people feel uneasy, and it will give them this feeling of neglect by where these people have to live. And they will buy newspapers like The Guardian and are more accepting to different ways of life. Done a bit of research on books, and I like the way that they've got like poetry on one side about like just different words about the photo, and then they've got tracing paper in the middle, so not all the photo is visible until you turn the page again to see the whole photo. And I looked at another artist called Paul Seawright, who did a book called Invisible Cities. It's like about going to Africa and seeing like the way they live and how it's been westernized, but it's still really gritty and kind of not as up as coming as the Western country. But bringing that to our country and seeing them places in a more developed world will make people think more about it. And he's also got a book called a series of photographs called Missing, where people, it was like photographing about people who've slipped away from society and remain hidden, like squatters and things like that. I want to make my book with like leather-bound cover with like a stamp of like a house on it. So it'll be quite expensive to get leather and everything. And then with a photo paper with acetate. And on the acetate I would do text and typography, kind of with the emotions of what the homeless people will feel about the space, what I mentioned earlier. And that will be the size of it. It will be 140 millimeters by 140, so a little small booklet, just so it's in your hands and you can see the outside world as long as reading it, so you can see the contrast. The photo style I'm going for is quite gritty, kind of dark, dingy, make it feel uninviting, like not pleasant to live in. I may have to take photos through obstacles and fences as well, showing these places are hard to get into, that they're trying to hide from society, and show that these people are invisible to people like us. And inspirational photos, like they're very dark, only using natural light that's coming in from like the window, shows hasn't been touched by people for ages, the sense of neglect and everything. And the use of white space I like in this one, where it drags your eyes from looking at the photo and then out into the real world, makes you feel like And this one shows like it's got sofas, so people have lived there and everything, and it's just gone downhill in the graffiti. It just, well, they just, yeah. And I've got my inspiration from the typography from the Tomato books, Skyscraper, I Love You, where on the right I've done my own little example, and it's just like letters and sounds that you hear or emotions that you feel, and it just reflects the photo. What I'm going to do with the typography on the right, I will print that on acetate, so you can see the photo in the background, but it's covered by the typography and the emotions of it, and you can flip it over and see the full image. I've taken from inspiration from the tracing paper on the book I showed you earlier. The distribution. I will sell the book. I originally said £10, but I think it will probably be quite a bit more for that, because leather's quite expensive, and it'll be for a higher class audience that will be able to afford it. They'll think, there's a book, it's like leather bound, so it'll look really nice from the outside, but it'll look old and worn as well. With like, it will say home, so they'll think, oh, because people like things about home and stuff, so they'll open it up and think, wow, this is quite shocking really. So I'm going for that kind of shock and like the incentive to change. And what I thought of doing, just after they've read it, maybe put like a small booklet of vouchers, like food vouchers at the back, just to make them think like, I've read this, I might want to do something about it. And what they can do is go out and go give it to homeless people. It will make the homeless person feel less invisible, and by people recognising them and maybe interacting with them, gives like higher class people will give their time to the homeless person to interact and talk. I want the profits from the book to go to services that offer guidance and counselling to homeless people to try and get them back on their feet, so bring them back into society and more visible. There's a few legal and ethical places, because I want to go to places of where derelict and dark and maybe abandoned, they're going to be fenced off, I might not be able to get into, so I've got to be careful for trespassing and things like that. And if I get caught, I could which I nearly did the other day, nearly got arrested for it. But
all in the name of art.
Sorry?
All in the name of art.
Yeah, but they could ask me to delete the photos I've taken, which could set me back in my project. I have to go find other places to find photos. This is an example of kind of how I want it to be laid out. Text on the left hand, acetate between the two pages with the typography on, and then a full bleed image on the right hand page. And this is a better example where you see just words to do with the surroundings. So you've got like a dark, horrible looking photo where you don't really feel like you want to live, and then photos to do with the
Is
area.
this your photo?
Yeah, I took that. And then the acetate would go in the middle like that, so it kind of covers half the photo, shows like emotion, but in a really subtle way, like you would have to analyse it to really know what it's about. And then my contingency, in the likely event that I'll be arrested, I was beaten up and my camera stolen, I've made a contingency plan. This involves me not going into abandoned buildings that may cause a threat and health and safety, but photographing other places around that homeless people will sleep, like under bridges, doorways, and just really unappealing places. What I could do is I could see where homeless people go, and maybe like the day after go there, take photos. I found a place in Chichester, it's kind of like an old garage that's been kind of ripped up. I had a look inside, it looks like someone's been living there. Took a few photos of that, I can add that in as well. That's everything.
I love the fact you said in the likely event. say it was going to be again?
I originally said £10, but I think I'll charge
If
a lot
it's
more.
if you're going to charge more, I think it should be a bit bigger than what you said it was, like the
These two.
size.
These rooms,
Yeah.
just so you can see the size of the.
Yeah. Just I think even if it was like tiny bit bigger than this one, then it'd be. I don't know, because you got to
Feel
think
more
of the
like
market, and
money.
these people spending money on something are going to want something.
I want
for
something
that money.
small so they can see the outside world as well, so they can see this is what I live in, this is what they're living in, like compare it like right in front
Yeah.
of their face.
Okay.
Without
that-
having to look away.
That's cool.
Are there
yeah.
other mechanisms to do that apart from scale?
I could do a hole in the
What
book.
other mechanisms have you explored?
I could burn a hole in the book so they can look through.
You could also, you could mention in the book, like, look at this and look at where you are now.
Look
Old
up.
Spice adverts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There could be a reflective page that is mirror-like.
On some of the acetate, I was thinking of maybe leaving it plain, have like a pen or whatever, so you can like. I was going to draw, kind of make the place look more homely, like in like an abandoned place. Draw wallpaper on the walls, draw curtains, just make it look a bit like home. Then you turn it over and it's just like horrible.
I think that's something I wasn't going to suggest that, but I think that sounds like a great idea. I was going to suggest that in your photos you have things that make it look like a home rather than just an abandoned warehouse or an abandoned because that could be anywhere and they just haven't let the warehouse for a few years, and you know because you know the town's not prospering. So something, even if you've got a huge abandoned warehouse, like a bed and a pillow in it, or something
Teddy bear.
that shows this is home, rather than just you can rent this warehouse for 12 months rent free because we can't let it. And I think that would be really powerful.
Yeah.
I wonder also whether you'd consider including some photos of some homeless hostels. And the reason I ask that is because that's then now home for homeless people. But then sometimes when people get put into hostels, people think, oh, okay, well they're housed. But they're not. Hostels are safe and warm, but they've got donated bed sheets on from the 1980s, and sometimes people have to share a room and stuff, and that's the reality, and that would be interesting. But that's the next stage of home as well.
Okay. Yeah.
But
I guess because it's like a magazine and it comes in issues, that could maybe come in like a
Yeah.
different issues of like one up from saying on the streets and things. If I could do another one alongside it that comes out like say like half a year afterwards, that will show like they've now got into a hostel and things are a bit better. They can actually, there's food at the hostel, they've got actual bed and more security, but it's still not a home. It's like temporary housing really, so it's still not
You
home
could
as
tell
we
a
see it.
story as well, like start with the horrible derelict abandoned building, slowly move on and hit a hostel, and then maybe hit like a small sort of bedsit house, and then so on and so forth.
I'll do a series of them.
It's a really interesting and really good concept from my perspective, and you know, for whatever that's worth in terms of working in homelessness, that there's a real focus on home. Because immediately when that came up, I thought of like the big glossy magazines like Home and Gardens and Design
Yeah.
and the hardbacks and things like that, and that's really nice.
I think having a title like that will make people pick it up because they'll like the sense of home and everything. Coming back home after going away is
Yeah.
nice for some people, but like for them maybe it's not so nice.
You earlier on you had an idea about having some sort of contrast or having two target audience, one which was homeless people themselves and one which was like you know, anybody with any kind of wealth. I'm just thinking, is there opportunity still to have that kind of contrast within your work? So, you know, on facing pages, one side is a reproduction from Ideal Home, and one side is your actual realistic experience of what a homeless person has to deal with.
Yeah, that would mean like for the pages, because I had the poetic kind of writing like kind of describing the emotions and everything, I'd have to kind of sacrifice that to put ideal home pictures in. I can have a look at the idea
But
as
you,
well.
you said it's really important for you for them to look around themselves and see what they've got. In a sense, by putting stereotyped perfect homes,
Yeah.
you know, with the fire burning and
Okay.
you know, and the kind of nice rugs and whatever and soft furnishings.
I can see
and
that
all
working
kind of
actually
thing.
now. Like, if I flip the book over and then on that side, having
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I'd love to see a book like that where you've got a nice hearth and fireplace at one point, and then an oil drum with the makeshift fire in the other, and they're both the fireplace of that person's home.
yeah. Okay.
We haven't really spoken about distribution and where you're going to sell it, and so you've got this product. You want to make it really quite expensive. You're doing something ethical with it. You're giving the vouchers.
Yeah.
Where is it going to be sold, and have you kind of have you explored that?
I haven't explored, but I can go into kind of higher end bookshops, like independent bookshops, I would say as well, because I would say people go into there and actually they'll see like a leather bound book. It might look old, and like, I don't know, people like old books to pick it up and they're interested by it.
So are these food vouchers for local place, or is this you're going to find these independent art bookshops everywhere, like in London, in Southampton, in
I'd like to
Bournemouth, in
think I could
Brighton?
do them all over the place, so the book can go everywhere really, but I'd have to find major companies that would actually accept these food vouchers. Like, because not like the major companies won't just give food vouchers out.
I would probably have an issue with the food vouchers, because coming back to something that we were talking about before, you've then got someone who could be skipping along the street giving out vouchers to people that they like or they don't like the look of, and here you're homeless, so here's a £3 voucher, go off to Tesco's. And I think the
Yeah.
implementation of that might be, I like the principle, and whether there was vouchers in the back that meant that different homelessness charities got a certain donation centrally from,
I think
like Waitrose do, where they put their little tokens in.
Yeah.
Something that's about channeling it, rather than, oh, you look hungry, here's £3, go and get yourself something.
It was
I think
more
we-
about just kind of making them visible, just like giving them a little bit of your time, just
Yeah.
making them feel more wanted in society, rather than just like the food vouchers. It's
Yeah.
like, here you're homeless, it's just like just giving them time of your day just to sit down, talk to them.
Could you change, I won't even tell you where my brain is going and why this is coming to my head, but could you change it for some kind of voucher or coupon, but it's for the owner of the book? So, take some fresh food down to the local homeless shelter is one voucher. Another one, spend half an hour looking up at homelessness on the internet and finding
like
out
a
what
good
my...
deed kind of book.
That's
Yeah.
a wicked idea.
The reason I was thinking that is because I was thinking of love vouchers and how you used to
Yeah.
get those as novelty. But that kind of thing that's going to make the owner think about it without putting them in danger or letting them sit in judgment of people, and
Yeah.
but still giving homeless people the time.
And it'll also make the person who's bought the book feel like they've got a lot more
Yeah.
out of it as well.
Feel good about it.
Yeah,
It's kind
because
of
sometimes
active
people don't
things.
know, how am I going to help a homeless person? I don't necessarily want to see them, but how am I going to help that? So, okay, week one, go and buy a big bag of shopping and take it to a homeless shelter. Week two, clear out your wardrobe and find all your old blankets and bedding and take it to the nearest hostel.
Yeah.
You know, you're telling people what to do, and it doesn't cost you anything, and you haven't got then the hassle of trying to find major companies.
That could quite link
exchange a
in
voucher.
with if you had, for example, some chapters. So you had a series of photos which were about bedding,
Yeah.
you know, exploring visually bedding, and your idea of like maybe there could be, you know,
So
pillows
you can
could be
focus it even more, not just like
exactly. So
Yeah.
you hit
Homes
that
that,
chapter
like,
and it's like there's something to tear
things
out.
in your
Go
home,
and do
like-
this now.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to food, and you're you know doing something to do with. There's a series of photos to do with food,
Yeah.
maybe
Okay.
something definitely to explore. Is there any other questions? I think that would also resolve some of the distribution kind of issues about where you can go, because there's certainly galleries that would sell something like that for you, and make sure that the money goes to charity, but there's not lots of them,
Yeah.
not in this area. So, you know, you're going to find a couple in Brighton, you're going to find a few in Bournemouth, a few in one or two in Southampton maybe, but then you're going to have to go up to, you know, completely different places in London and stuff like that. So you could probably get to 10 places and convince them to sell it.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
No, my golden one was on distribution, but you covered it well. Thank you. I was ready to go.
Cool. Thanks ever so much.
Thank you. Well, thank you.